The Galactic Council's Grand Assembly Hall was the most fortified and prestigious meeting space in the known universe. Suspended in the heart of the spiral galaxy Keltraxis, it was a monolithic construct of fused neutron steel, reinforced with quantum-shielded plating that could withstand a supernova-level detonation. It had seen thousands of years of deliberations between species so ancient their homeworlds had long since turned to cosmic dust. But today was different, because humans had arrived. The arrival of the Deathworlders. At precisely fourth rotation of the central cycle, a human vessel dropped out of FTL warp just outside the Keltraxis buffer zone, a region of space where only the most advanced civilizations were permitted to operate. The ship, UNS Endeavour, was primitive by the standards of the Council's elder races. It lacked the bioorganic design of the Avalari, the phase-shifting architecture of the Nixari, or the gravity-dominating constructs of the Drynax Imperium. But it didn't matter, because it was human, and that alone terrified the galaxy. The warning from the Council. The moment the ship docked at the Grand Assembly, the ruling powers of the Galactic Council convened in an emergency session. Representatives from over 1,000 intelligent species gathered in towering arcs around the central chamber, their forms ranging from gelatinous bioluminescent beings to towering reptilian warlords and even amorphous energy constructs that defied physical reality. At the head of the council stood High Chancellor Velcari, an ancient and highly evolved member of the Orzal Dominion, a species renowned for their psychic prowess and diplomatic dominance. Velcari's golden eyes shimmered as he gazed down at the three humans who had been escorted into the chamber. They were small compared to most of the beings present, standing a mere 2 meters at most. And yet, despite their lack of stature, their presence was overwhelming. Their leader, Ambassador Elias Grant, was flanked by 2 individuals. One was Dr. Sophia Langley, a xenobiologist specializing in interspecies physiology. The other? Commander Jack Halstead, a soldier from Earth's infamous Void Core. Velcari's voice was smooth, but it carried undeniable weight. Humans. The chamber fell silent. Do you understand where you stand? Elias Grant, ever the diplomat, gave a respectful nod. We do, Chancellor Velcari. And we thank the Council for granting us an audience. Velcari's mandibles clicked in what passed for a sigh. You are the first Deathworld species to ever be permitted entry into the Assembly. Do you know why? Grant held his gaze. Because most species in this room fear us. The silence that followed was deafening. The Drynaxian warlord, a 3-ton 6-armed behemoth wrapped in antimatter battle plating, let out a guttural growl. Fear? His voice rumbled. What do you offer that the great species of this council should fear? The Deathworld revelation. Sophia Langley, up until this point silent, took a step forward. She placed a small, spherical holographic projector on the ground, which instantly flickered to life. A rotating model of Earth appeared, complete with data streams, environmental reports, and climate readings. The chamber stared in confusion. Sophia's voice was calm but deliberate. Earth is classified as a Deathworld Class 5. The highest classification before a world is considered completely uninhabitable. There were murmurs in the hall. A Deathworld Class 5? Velcari narrowed his gaze. We are aware of your planet's status. What does this have to do with our concerns? Sophia gestured, and the holographic display zoomed in on a vast, swirling storm in Earth's atmosphere. On Earth we call this a Category 5 hurricane. It spans over 1,000 kilometers and produces winds exceeding 320 kilometers per hour. There were audible reactions from multiple council members. The Avalari, who thrived in perfectly balanced, controlled ecosystems, visibly recoiled. Sophia continued. Earthquakes powerful enough to split continents, tsunamis capable of wiping out entire populations, volcanic eruptions releasing enough force to rival nuclear detonations. This is the world that shaped humanity. She paused, letting the weight of the words sink in. We did not conquer our planet. She looked around the room. We survived it. A species forged in adversity. Jack Halstead stepped forward, his military uniform crisp, his presence commanding. He pulled a long, jagged scar up his sleeve, revealing a series of old wounds across his forearm. This? He smirked. Got this from a Bengal tiger. A predator from our planet that weighs around 300 kilograms and has claws that can cut through bone. A council member from the Klaxi swarm, a species that evolved in a predator-free environment, visibly fainted. Halstead turned, his voice steady. Our world isn't gentle. Every single human standing in this room? Their ancestors survived war, disease, famine, planetary disasters, and extinction events that wiped out entire species. He gestured at himself. I have run through burning forests. I have swum through frozen waters. I have endured crushing gravity and fought in oxygen-thin atmospheres. Then with a cold, knowing smile he asked, "Tell me, which one of you could do the same?" The shocked assembly. Silence. A profound, crushing silence. The realization settled into the chamber like an inescapable weight. The humans were not just another species. They were an anomaly. In the known galaxy, species either adapted to their environments or altered them. Humans? They had no such luxury. Instead, they had evolved to survive the harshest conditions imaginable. They had adapted to threats so severe that any other species would have been wiped out. The Council had expected humans to come begging for inclusion, to seek protection, to request aid. Instead, they came with a warning. A warning wrapped in polite words, veiled behind smiles, but undeniable in its implications. We are not like you. We do not fear what you fear. And if you think you can intimidate us, you are gravely mistaken. The High Chancellor's verdict. Valkyrie's golden eyes locked onto Elias Grant. For a long moment, the High Chancellor was silent. Then he gave a slow, measured nod. Very well. He stood, his regal robes flowing behind him as he addressed the assembly. Humanity has made its case. And I must acknowledge, it is compelling. The chamber was dead silent. Then the High Chancellor turned to Grant and spoke words that would change the galaxy forever. Welcome to the Council, Deathworlders. The silence in the Grand Assembly Hall was palpable. The galaxy had never encountered a species quite like humanity. They weren't the strongest, the fastest, or the most technologically advanced. But they were something far more dangerous. Survivors. The murmurs of over 1,000 species filled the chamber. Some voices were angry, others fearful. But one thing was clear. The revelation about humanity's Deathworld origins had shaken the foundation of the Galactic Council. And some were not pleased. A deep, guttural laugh rumbled through the chamber. The sound echoed like thunder. The source? Overlord Trazak of the Drynax Imperium, a towering 4-meter-tall warlord wrapped in antimatter battle plating. His 6 arms flexed, each one powerful enough to crush a lesser being. His species had ruled over entire sectors of space, dominating through sheer physical superiority. Trazak's voice was a growl of amusement. So, the humans think they are dangerous. The council fell silent as he stepped forward, his enormous form casting a shadow over the human delegation. His golden eyes gleamed with predatory delight as he loomed over Commander Jack Halstead. I see no warriors before me, Trazak sneered. Just fragile creatures who boast of survival. Let us see if you are worthy of the council's respect. A challenge. The hall hushed. Elias Grant, the human ambassador, held his tongue. This was the moment they had expected. They had made their case with words. But the galaxy did not always respect words. It respected power. And humans were not ones to back down. Jack Halstead stepped forward. He gazed up at the Drynaxian warlord, his expression unreadable. You want proof? He asked, voice calm. Trazak grinned, baring rows of serrated fangs. I demand it. Then name the terms, Halstead said, rolling his shoulders. Let's get this over with. The chamber erupted in whispers. Had the human just accepted a challenge from a Drynaxian overlord? Valkyrie, the High Chancellor, raised a hand. Overlord Trazak, be mindful. You challenge an ambassador's escort. Trazak laughed. Then they should have sent a stronger escort. His clawed fingers tapped against the metal of his battle armor. Single combat. His golden eyes glowed. Traditional rules of the Grand Arena. The council gasped. This was serious. The Grand Arena was a historical battleground where disputes between species had been settled for millennia. It was not a sparring match. It was a fight for dominance. And humans had just been invited to prove their worth with blood. Into the Grand Arena. Within the hour, thousands of spectators had gathered inside the massive Colosseum-like structure built into the Grand Assembly Station. The Grand Arena was a place where warriors of various species had tested their might, engaging in duels that shaped intergalactic policy. Valkyrie had granted official permission for the challenge. If humanity won, they would cement their place in the council. If they lost, it would be a humiliating lesson in the real power of the galaxy. Jack Halstead stood in the center of the arena, rolling his shoulders as the energy barriers locked into place around the battlefield. Across from him, Trazak loomed, his armored form casting a monstrous silhouette against the light of the twin suns shining through the arena's energy dome. The announcer's voice boomed across the Colosseum. "Begin." Trazak moved first. And he was fast. His four upper arms blurred, striking with impossible speed for a being of his size. His claws were tipped with sonic disruptor blades, capable of tearing through starship hulls. To the gathered species watching, the outcome was already decided. But then, Halstead moved, and everything changed. The Deathworlder advantage. Trazak's first strike should have shattered Halstead's ribcage. But instead, Halstead wasn't there. His body shifted at the last second, moving with inhuman reflexes. The air whistled as Trazak's massive strike missed by mere centimeters, slamming into the arena floor with a thunderous crash. Halstead's counter was instantaneous. He pivoted on his heel, stepping inside Trazak's guard, and drove his fist straight into the warlord's exposed joint plating. The impact resounded like a cannon shot. The arena gasped. Trazak staggered. A Drynaxian overlord, staggering? It was unthinkable. But Halstead wasn't done. He moved like a predator. Years of combat training on Earth's battlefields, the harshest in the known universe, had sculpted him into something the galaxy didn't understand. He wasn't stronger. He wasn't faster. He was smarter. And deadlier. Trazak roared in fury, swinging with all six arms in a frenzied assault. But Halstead wasn't there. He weaved between the attacks, dodging by millimeters, his movements almost inhumanly precise. Trazak's frustration grew. He was used to overpowering his opponents. But he had never fought a Deathworlder. Because Deathworlders didn't fight fair. They fought to survive. And survival meant exploiting weaknesses. Halstead's voice was calm, his breathing measured. "You're slow." Trazak's golden eyes burned with rage. "You're weak." The warlord snarled. Halstead's smirk was cold. "And now, you're finished." The shocking end. The moment Trazak overextended, Halstead struck. A brutal pivot step. A well-placed strike to the Drynaxian's lower spinal nerve cluster. And Trazak fell. His massive body collapsed, slamming into the arena floor with a crash that shook the entire structure. The crowd was silent. A human, a Deathworlder, had just taken down a warrior species overlord. In less than 2 minutes, Halstead exhaled, stepping back. He never even broke a sweat. The announcer's voice echoed across the stunned arena. "The victor is humanity." The entire assembly erupted. Some species cheered. Others were horrified. Valkyrie, watching from the Chancellor's box, exhaled slowly. "So it is true," he murmured. "Deathworlders really are different." And for the first time in Galactic Council history, the galaxy truly understood what had just been unleashed. The Grand Assembly had never been so shaken. Jack Halstead's victory over Overlord Trazak wasn't just a spectacle, it was a revelation. The warlord's unconscious body was dragged from the arena, his once mighty form crumpled and broken. His people, the Drynax Imperium, had never witnessed a defeat like this. A single human, a Deathworlder, had just taken down a warrior species overlord in under 2 minutes. And now, the entire galactic community was forced to reconsider everything they thought they knew. Fear and admiration. As Halstead stepped out of the combat ring, his knuckles still aching from the fight, Ambassador Elias Grant gave him a smirk. "That was subtle," Grant muttered under his breath. Halstead shrugged. "He asked for it." Valkyrie, the High Chancellor, stood at the edge of the platform, observing the aftermath with an expression of deep contemplation. The other species present in the chamber were a mixture of stunned, horrified, or deeply intrigued. The Avalari, a species whose frail, crystalline bodies shattered under strong winds, looked at Halstead with something bordering on worship. The Klaxi swarm, who had never encountered a predator in their evolutionary history, couldn't even look at him. The Nixari delegates, an advanced civilization of energy-based beings who had never known physical combat, studied the humans with newfound respect. But there was one group that did not react with admiration. The Erdani Dominion. One of the most powerful factions in the galaxy. And their leader, Supreme Strategist Vorkan, was furious. A dangerous enemy. Vorkan, a towering insectoid being with obsidian-black exoskeleton plating, rose from his seat in the council chamber, his 4 blade-like mandibles twitching in agitation. The Erdani had never lost a war. They had conquered entire star systems, crushed entire civilizations, and shaped the balance of power for over 1,000 years. And now, in the span of a single afternoon, they had been forced to reconsider their entire strategy toward humanity. Vorkan's voice clicked with controlled fury. This changes nothing, he declared. Humans are still a minor species. A single duel proves nothing. Strength is not measured in one-on-one combat. It is measured in dominance. It is measured in control. And humanity has none. Valkyrie, ever the diplomat, gave him a measured glance. And yet you are concerned. Vorkin's mandibles twitched. He turned to Elias Grant, his glowing amber eyes narrowing. Tell me, human ambassador. What do you truly seek in this council? The truth about humanity's goal. Elias Grant had been waiting for this question. He straightened, his diplomatic training kicking in, and chose his words carefully. Humanity does not seek war. Some of the council members visibly relaxed. We do not seek conquest. A few more sighs of relief. But make no mistake, if war comes to us, we will not just survive. The tension returned instantly. Grant's voice was calm but unyielding. We will win. The room froze. For a long moment, the only sound was the distant hum of the station's energy core. Vorkin let out a low, guttural clicking noise. How bold. And what, exactly, makes you believe such an absurd thing? Elias Grant exchanged a glance with Halstead, then nodded toward Dr. Sophia Langley, the xenobiologist who had introduced humanity's Deathworld status in the first place. She took a step forward and activated another holographic projection. It wasn't a map of Earth this time. It was a collection of data points, genetic sequencing, and military records. She looked at Vorkin and spoke plainly. Because you don't understand what Deathworlders are truly capable of. The evolution of a Deathworld species. The projection zoomed in on various records from Earth's history. The Black Plague. The Ice Ages. Nuclear warfare. The genetic adaptations of humans, from our unparalleled endurance to our ability to adapt to nearly any climate, were displayed in horrifying clarity. Sophia's voice was measured but relentless. Your species have always lived in stability. Your evolution was shaped by controlled environments, by civilizations that guided you. Humanity had none of that. Our world was designed to kill us. And yet we adapted. She gestured toward Halstead. Our warriors don't fight for honor. We fight to end threats as efficiently as possible. She pointed toward Elias Grant. Our diplomats don't negotiate to maintain order. We negotiate to ensure our survival. She turned to the entire chamber. And our scientists? We don't just innovate, we break the laws of physics if we have to. Because in a world that constantly tries to kill you, you either adapt, or you die. She gave Vorkin a level stare. And we do not die easily. The Erdani's response. The silence was oppressive. For a long moment, Vorkin simply stared. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement, he deactivated his council sigil, a traditional act of contemplation. I see. His voice was measured, but there was something behind it. Something that had not been there before. Respect. Valkyrie, the High Chancellor, exhaled slowly. He turned to the rest of the chamber and spoke words that would change the course of galactic history. It is decided. Humanity will be given full recognition within the Galactic Council. The arena erupted. Some species cheered. Others were terrified. But in that moment, one thing was clear. The galaxy had just gained its most unpredictable member. And the power balance of the known universe would never be the same again. The Grand Assembly was in chaos. Humanity had been granted full membership in the Galactic Council, a decision that would reshape the balance of power in ways the galaxy was not ready for. Some species celebrated, seeing humanity as a valuable ally. Others whispered in fear, realizing they had vastly underestimated the capabilities of this new Deathworlder species. And then there were those who saw this as a direct threat to their dominion. At the center of it all stood Supreme Strategist Vorkin of the Erdani Dominion. His glowing amber eyes narrowed as he observed Elias Grant and Jack Halstead, his mandibles twitching in contemplation. The Erdani had never feared another species. Until now. The Erdani's last move. This is unacceptable, Vorkin growled, his deep voice cutting through the chamber's noise. The other Erdani around him hissed in agreement, their chitinous exoskeletons shifting in agitation. Valkyrie, the High Chancellor, raised a hand. The decision has been made, Strategist Vorkin. Humanity has proven itself. A single duel means nothing, Vorkin snapped. We of the Erdani Dominion do not bow to mere displays of skill. True power is measured in war. Silence fell over the chamber. War. The word hung in the air like a live plasma charge ready to detonate. Elias Grant's face remained neutral, but Jack Halstead could see the tension in his posture. They had expected this reaction. Vorkin's claws scraped against the floor as he took a step forward. Your presence here is a mistake, humans. You do not belong. And I will prove it. He turned toward Valkyrie. I invoke the right of strategic domination. The chamber gasped. Jack's hands clenched into fists. What's that? He muttered to Grant. The human ambassador's face was grim. A war game. A real one. Valkyrie looked troubled. The right has not been invoked in centuries, Vorkin. And yet it remains law, Vorkin replied smoothly. The Council cannot deny it. Humanity must prove itself, not in mere combat but in war. Otherwise, their place here is nothing but a farce. Elias Grant exhaled slowly. He turned to Jack. We can't refuse. If we do, humanity loses all credibility. Jack's expression was unreadable. Then we accept. The war games begin. 3 standard cycles later, the simulation battle commenced. A massive hollow-projected battlefield was created over Zaltris Prime, an uninhabited planet used for military exercises. Hundreds of ships, thousands of troops, and countless strategic assets were digitally rendered for the test. The rules were simple. The Erdani would command one fleet. Humanity would command the other. No outside interference. No alliances. Just strategy. Vorkin stood on the command platform, his 4 arms folded, mandibles clicking in amusement. He had spent his entire life studying war. He had never lost. And he was about to remind the galaxy why. Are you ready to be humbled, human? He asked, his voice dripping with arrogance. Elias Grant merely smiled. Let's begin. Jack Halstead, standing beside him, gave a quiet chuckle. The Erdani didn't know what was coming. The Deathworlders' way of war. As the simulation began, the Erdani fleet moved with perfect discipline. Their battle formations were flawless. Their ship coordination was impeccable. Their tactics were efficient, calculated, precise. They were a textbook example of military superiority. And that was their fatal mistake. Because humanity did not fight by the book. As the battle unfolded, the Erdani forces encountered something they had never seen before. Human unpredictability. One by one their formations crumbled. Their tactical advantages vanished. Their forces were outmaneuvered at every turn. Vorkin's confidence turned to confusion. Then rage. Then fear. The tides turn. This is impossible. Vorkin roared as yet another of his battleships was flanked by a seemingly random, chaotic human maneuver. His strategists scrambled, trying to counter the madness. But there was no pattern. There was no logic. Humanity's battle doctrine was built on adaptation, deception, and sheer unpredictability. Their troops faked retreats, only to spring devastating ambushes. Their ships broke formation at random, confusing the Erdani into leaving gaps in their defenses. And then, when the moment was right, the humans struck with terrifying precision. In a matter of hours, the mighty Erdani forces were in full retreat. Vorkin watched in horrified disbelief as his fleet was obliterated by a species that shouldn't have been able to win. And yet here they were, winning. The final blow. As the last Erdani command ship was surrounded, Vorkin's mandibles trembled. The battle simulation ended. The results flashed in bold letters. Victory, humanity. Silence fell over the chamber. The Erdani, the species that had never lost a war game, had just been defeated. By a species that wasn't even supposed to be here. Vorkin slowly turned toward Elias Grant and Jack Halstead. His amber eyes burned with barely contained fury. What are you? He hissed. Elias Grant gave him a polite, diplomatic smile. Jack Halstead simply smirked. Deathworlders. The galaxy will never be the same. The aftermath was felt across the entire Galactic Council. Humanity was no longer a curiosity. They were no longer a mere newcomer. They were a force. One that changed everything. The species of the galaxy now understood a terrible truth. Humanity was not the strongest. Humanity was not the fastest. Humanity was not the most advanced. But they were the deadliest. Because Deathworlders don't lose. They endure. They adapt. And when necessary, they win. Fire enjoyed this story? Subscribe to the Void Narratives for more epic sci-fi adventures. Rocket.